Greetings, I am Danielle Gandhi, editorial analyst for commercial UAV news, and today I'm joined by the team at Intel Geospatial to talk about their geospatial platform, use cases, industry challenges, and their upcoming webinar on April 22nd. Welcome! It's an honor to have you all here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle.
So can you each introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background and experience in the commercial UAV industry? Mark, can we start with you?
Sure. I'm Mark Davis. I run our business development for Intel Geospatial. My whole career has been involved with remote sensing and sort of solving commercial challenges, whether it's environmental monitoring, asset process control. And over the last 8 years have been involved in the commercial UAV sector, starting with a company we're looking at flight controls in the early days of drones and how to fly and capture imagery that people were looking for, then evolved to a manufacturer, Canadian-based company, Ariane Labs, which had a Sky Ranger, sort of a high-end for public safety and inspection purposes. And then the last about 3 years with Intel, looking at really more the data side. So as the market has evolved from flying to capturing to really doing work with drones, have lived that over the last 8 years. So go ahead, Rowland.
Yeah, great. I'm Rowland Marshall. I'm the co-head of product for the Intel Geospatial Platform. I've been working on the product for about 4 years now. I actually saw my first drone probably about 20 years ago, but then really started working in earnest in the industry about 10 years ago in Australia. I was managing a research project on BVLOS for companies like Boeing, In Situ Pacific, QT, CSIRO, and ARCA. And that included other different kinds of applications. I then moved to Europe, where I worked for Parrot drones, and then I also worked as a drone consultant on a couple of different applications. And then I came across to Intel to work on drone applications here. It's been pretty heavily focused on industrial drones and drone applications. And then since then, we've had a stronger focus on, as Mark said, the intersection of remote sensing and AI with a particular lean towards industrial applications.
Intel is a company known for processors and other hardware, with the Intel Geospatial Platform being a new software offering from Intel. Can you provide some background on the genesis for the platform?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, traditionally, Intel's been known for our strength in chips and servers. However, over the years, we've grown to encompass a pretty rich ecosystem of remote sensing hardware and applications, such as drones, like I said, RealSense, Mobileye, and all of these being powered by a pretty deep level of understanding around artificial intelligence at both a core compute and also server and cloud level. So looking back at around 2017, 2018, it became pretty apparent to us that these areas were sort of converging and enabling a pretty complex geovisual data platform usage, and that data to be used in a powerful new way. So I think I would say that with Intel Geospatial, what we're doing is we're taking all these different technologies and combining them together in a SaaS solution. And that makes geovisual data more easily accessible to a broad array of enterprise and government customers to do things that they simply just couldn't do before.
And who is the Intel Geospatial Platform for? What types of organizations and users will benefit?
Sure. Really, we've looked at it across three different main groups. There's asset owners, there's the geospatial service providers, as well as some of the application and analytic developers. And when we say asset owners, it could be the big utilities, energy companies, or cities, people that own properties. And then within that, there's really, a variety of users. So like take, for example, in a utility, there's the operations team that have responsible for inspecting however many, hundreds or thousands of assets in a given year. At the same time, there may be a vegetation crew within that utility that's looking for encroachments or certain types of risk. The engineering team needs to see the data as far as if they're laying out a new line or putting on some new components on those towers or poles. Linemen may need to see something real quickly because they've got a repair they're getting ready for. They want to see what the situation is, maybe what types of components to bring with them in the truck. So, even the planners, do I assess this whole string and I got to make a decision whether I'm going to recommend replacement or new construction or different integrity management questions that they're addressing. And then lastly, like risk and compliance managers. they want to make sure they're meeting all the compliance standard for their utility commission, or the risk assessors, like how do they prioritize to minimize risk, say from more severe storms we've been having, and threats of fire and those kind of things. So really across an organization, whether it's a utility, energy company, many different stakeholders are gaining access to this data. And before, there was very siloed, that they could only access it through their individual tools, or based on their expertise. If they were a GIS analyst, they could look at it, but the other folks really didn't have access. So democratizing sort of these answers and the visualization of what the reality is versus a flat little schematic, it has proven to be really valuable. And then from the geospatial service provider's point of view, they're heavily relied on by a lot of these asset owners. A lot of contract services go out to get inspection done or risk assessments. And so these guys often will do the initial assessment and provide the utility or their customer with the answers. And so can they get more miles done in a given day, or more properties done in a given week? So these kind of tools help them get their work done faster, or point out issues in a different way, versus just humans looking at every single picture, as an example. And then from the engineering service providers, they want, maybe it's different accuracy, different type of data, that's coming off a drone, looking at it from a different lens, and how they're going to design or understand where the 5G antenna may plug in, or the height of the poles, or those kind of things. And then the last group are really the applications and analytic developers. So many different use cases, as this industry knows, for the use of commercial drones. And there's, very specific requirements to how I'm going to solve a problem for in an oil field for fracking, or for a utility for transmission assets. And so a lot of folks are developing these point solutions, but how do you run those at scale across the whole country? And if you're a small organization, or if you're a data scientist and you've come up with a woodpecker hole analytic example, how could you deploy that across many utilities, that have the fear of woodpeckers poking holes in their towers, those kind of things. But from an analytics perspective, maybe Rowland, you can speak to, like, for the developers, some of the users in that bucket.
Yeah, sure. I think, look, the basic starting point is, Intel is all about building ecosystems. And so whether you're a small organization or a large organization, you're going to have a different approach to your analytic development or analytic portfolio. If you're smaller, you're just starting out, you might not have a data science team, and you might be relying on a service provider or Intel itself to develop analytics for you. But as you grow your data science capabilities, it'll just be like when you deploy a drone program. You might outsource the simple tasks to third parties. The equivalent of mapping. You might have some basic analytics that you're outsourcing, but you might have a core data science team internally, or that you engage through a service provider to really develop your focus workflows and focus analytics. And we try to cater to all of that by providing you with some core analytic functionality, but then also providing that platform with APIs and AI feedback loop to allow you to deploy your own analytics and learn and improve those analytics as you move forward and grow. So we're really hoping to be able to grow with you as you grow from one data scientist to a whole team.
So your presentation is going to cover some UAV use cases for industries, including utilities, energy, and insurance. Without giving too much away, can you tell us about one or two of the use cases you'll be highlighting?
Sure. The areas that we're going to highlight, we think of it across a couple of dimensions. There's vertical structures, right? Drones are very helpful for getting this, bird's eye perspective or an advanced overhead view. So a structure could be a transmission tower or a cell tower or tall buildings and those things. So what we're going to be talking about is an AI assisted workflow for doing these kind of inspections. So over the last several years, drone folks have gotten really good at capturing imagery on these structures. But when you talk about tens of thousands of structures and you're looking for only the ones with a certain condition, managing that data becomes really tough. So can you use AI along with a subject matter expert to get to the answers quicker, to prioritize your risks? The next is if you're looking over a large area, let's say like an oil field or a city, and you're looking for other items. It could be environmental risks from oil leaks, or it could be where flooding could impact a particular property. So that, a drone could be used and create an ortho map of the area or in the terrain. But then could you run analytics to look for fire hazards or for leaks or other kinds of items? And then the last one is sort of taking drone imagery that's being captured and then merging it or mixing it with some other, whether it's the GIS data or the asset information or data that was captured by other means. It could be an aircraft or LiDAR from a terrestrial vehicle. And so what we're finding is the combination of drone data plus this other visual data sources can be used to solve a problem that either one of them by themselves wasn't very particularly good at. So those are the 3 areas that we'll be talking and covering in our session.
When looking across the utility energy insurance sectors, are there some common challenges you're seeing related to the use of UAVs?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think over the last couple of years, everybody's been working hard to try and work out how to do their pilot programs and spin up drone programs. At the 1, 2, and 5 drone level, and even extending it out these days into 20 drones, 100 drones, and more for an organization. I think the challenges are switching operationally away from what's happening with the drone. Typically, the people managing the drones are very technically capable people, and they don't have any problem understanding what they're doing and what they're producing as a result. Inside Intel Geospatial, we typically talk about 3 main challenges that are being faced by the next phase of the data, downstream from the data collector, and that's around about managing, visualizing, and analyzing the data. First things first, like Mark was saying, the customers are struggling to collate multiple data types in one location. From drone providers with sensors like the L1 coming out, which have RGB and LiDAR built into the same thing, they're finding that mixed data is coming out and they don't know where to put it or don't know how to manage it. And then they've also got their GIS data, satellite data, aircraft data also coming in. So we help people not only manage, but also source their data and put it into the context of their assets, which is important for them. It's not just sitting in a box. And that allows them to focus directly on the value of their business. From a visualization perspective, geovisual data has traditionally been accessible only to a very small, technically capable subset of people, GIS or drone operators that have access to complex software. We enable an entirely new and larger and differently skilled part of the organization to access and visualize complex and massive data in a simple and convenient manner. And that means that a broader set of the organization is able to look at it and view models. And lastly, the analysis of the data is a very big challenge. Building and running analytics is really expensive, and oftentimes the subject matter expert is more focused on building and maintaining IT systems rather than solving core problems. So we try and do that heavy lift. They can focus on the key problem. As Mark said, they're not worried about wrangling the data in from different locations. We're putting it in a place, using AI to help them access it faster and get value out of it that's more aligned with their business.
Yeah, and one other additional piece is once they have these answers, a lot of these main asset owners have business systems that exist that they're following for managing their work or maintaining compliance or updating their systems of record. And so how you can feed the answers back into these back-end tools or receive it in from the front-end tool is another key piece. We don't see this as a standalone environment that is someone's just going to use this off to the side. So, as these main customers, utilities, energy, insurance, are looking at transforming and being, becoming more digital, and whether it's a digital twin and using this information, it has to tie to their business process. Yep. And so the formats, the integration points, the APIs are key, which we address. And then lastly, Intel, while we're a big company, we're not going to solve all the challenges that these customers as subject matter experts need. And so bringing in key partners that may have expertise in how to identify these kind of anomalies on a utility pole, or these guys that are really good at classifying certain types of LiDAR data, or whatever it might be, is, Intel is known for sort of enabling ecosystems and building partnership networks. And so that's another piece of our offer is to allow the customers to get best of breed to solve their problems versus, expect one group just to do it all.
Yep, I agree, totally.
Excellent point. So your presentation is going to include information on the AI-based analysis of UAV collected data. As you mentioned a couple times now throughout this interview, can you provide a little more information on what you'll be covering?
Yeah, not a problem. Look, so when I talk to people about AI-based analysis, I like to use the analogy of running a drone program, which we talked a little bit about before. As most of your viewers know, running a drone program at sort of 1, 2, or even 5 drones is pretty easy, or easier. But then when you really try and scale it out, it's an absolute headache. So Intel in this regard is thinking several steps ahead. We don't just talk about a single analytic or a single workflow or a single data set. We talk about the concept of having an analytic portfolio. So with an evolving drone program, you're going to rely on a mixture of in-house and contracted drone operators. And so we feel, why can't you do the same with your analytics, just like Mark was saying? So for us, the Geospatial platform is not just a collection of analytics, but rather it's a platform that allows Intel, customer, third-party analytics to be deployed in different configurations, a bit like Lego. And we also provide tools for collecting analytic feedback from the field. And that allows people to rapidly improve and redeploy new analytic versions. That way, again, we want the SMEs to focus on their activity and what they're really good at. So when we do our demonstration next week, we're going to walk through a couple of examples of these analytics with a focus, obviously, on drone-based inspection. But we're also going to talk about some additional data types and how we integrate, GIS and LiDAR, and how an organization might build out their own analytic portfolio. We'll touch on things like automated object identification and measurement tools, out of the box AI classifiers that Intel and third-party providers have, and some of the data sets that we have. We'll touch on human AI feedback loops, and obviously we'll talk about AI deployment as well. But we really want to convey that message that a company can take control of their own portfolio.
Fantastic. Just to wrap up this conversation, is there any key takeaways?
No, I mean, one is, I think showing the capabilities. Roland's going to spend some time in showing examples with, real customer data with some sample sets on, so you can really understand it. I think when you just talk about in theory or you're just talking or in slides, getting that understanding. So we're gonna jump into the tool in a number of places to give real examples. And while we have some case studies on how this kind of approach has been used to deal with fire recovery situations when we're working with the utility in the West that unfortunately experienced a fire last year, or others that are looking at sort of enhancing their drone service providers' ability to deliver results, through the tool. These are just some that, will show how that might be done in a tool like ours.
Yeah, and I would say from my perspective, I'm hoping that people will be able to walk away saying, understanding that Intel's really trying to do the heavy lift for them, to allow their data scientists and GIS experts and field experts to focus on their own workflows, and also that we're trying to enable a bigger part of the organization to easily access data they couldn't see before. And I think if we do that, then that's the right direction for the conversation.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. And I look forward to April 22nd when we join you for your webinar.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.